Hello everyone, welcome to this week's LSM's Corner. I'll go ahead and kick this one off with a quick update on the status of my hand and wrist. I am cautiously optimistic. Over the past couple days, I've seen some slight improvement, although it's become very clear that even when I start getting back to work, I'm definitely going to have to make that a very gradual change. So I'm going to have to start with a small amount of work per day and gradually work my way up. However, I'm optimistic that perhaps I could get back to doing that as soon as maybe around the end of this week. So if everything goes well, hopefully we'll be able to hit that. Um, quick update on the status of coming updates. Hitori is working on features for the 2.6.8 update, features and bug fixes. And we have a few things coming soon, such as, for instance, sword revamp, which Warasaki is going to be putting in a lot of work on. And we are still planning the Hell event. There's a question about that later, so I will wait to answer that there. But Hell event is coming, hopefully this month. And yeah, I will have more news again on probably the specific status of things in another week or two when I can have a better idea of exactly how my hand is doing then. I'll move right into the questions, starting with the future update and feature questions. First question, hey LSM, when is the custom change tokens to custom Zan coming? Okay, so this one, definitely not for at least 2 weeks, but I'm gonna try to have it so it'll probably be in the 2.6.8 update, which should be coming 2-3 weeks from now. So hopefully then. Next question. Hello, I would like to know if there are any plans to make Elite Squads more interactive. Right now, there isn't much to do as officers in Elite Squad, and I think it would be pretty awesome if Elite Squad officers could send alerts to their members or something. Anything besides just holding a seat would be really awesome. Yeah, this is a good point. Um, there's a few ideas I have for. I really want to tie in, as well as holding the seat, I wanted to tie in some extra requirements for elite squad officers. But the core concept of the elite squads is a little bit less about leading your squad members and a little bit more about mastering the craft of whichever elite squad you're in. However, even in that respect, we could be doing a little bit more to provide some separation there. But certainly they are definitely intended to be more about the abilities and perks within, whereas for that sort of leadership, the leadership role, and being able to command a squad of people, that is more accomplished by the numbered squads and fractions. So if that's something you're really into, then you might want to consider one of those. However, I will look into adding more things for elite squad officers to do specifically. I also want to add. One of my plans is to give them unique officer patrols instead of the normal ones. There would be unique activities specific to each elite squad. Unique sort of mini games, similar to the officer patrol mini game, but completely different in structure based on something unique to the aspect of that squad. What exactly I would do for each of them, I haven't gotten the details hammered down yet, but we will see. Next question, would you ever consider adding an item that grants users an extra move slot? I think it is a nice compromise and makes things a bit more interesting. Um, this isn't an idea at its core that I particularly like. I mean, it's possible at some point in the future I might explore that, but I certainly have no immediate plans to do that. And something would probably have to fundamentally change for me to want to do that. Right now, it's actually a lot more complicated to add an extra move slot than you would think for a number of reasons. There's balance considerations, there's technical considerations, interface design considerations. There's a lot that goes into it, and it's not just a matter of giving somebody an item that throws on an extra move slot. I have to really consider all the other aspects of it. So right now I don't want to do that. Possible I might explore to the future, but I'm not sure. Next, will images of avatars, signatures, and cards, etc. ever be free for all users' journal, specifically non-Aura players? Because it makes me feel bad when I look at journals of non-Aura players that have links in their journal. Um, I'm not planning to make the images free. This is one of those areas where it's a way that I can provide a perk for people who spend money that has absolutely no combat or training advantage or anything in the game. So it's a place where I can generate some revenue without it being pay to win. However, I am planning to have potentially, in the same way that you can earn tokens for a custom sword, I am planning to also make it so that you can earn potentially aura tokens for getting a weak aura. Or maybe a strong aura, but probably just weak aura for that. So we'll see. Um, with everything going on, those aura tokens I have to wait, especially with the sword tokens. I have to be a little bit careful when I'm putting in too much stuff that can potentially decrease the revenue because I can't. It would not be very good if the revenue all crashed at once. So I need to sort of be pretty gradual and deliberate about that and make sure that I'm handling things properly. But potentially could be making at least weak aura achievable without having to spend shards. At which point you would be able to do that in order to get the images in your journal. Until I decide to do that, until whenever we implement that, which there's some chance it might not be implemented, but it's pretty likely, just not for a while. Um, until that point, not going to be making them free because it's a sort of a way WoW can generate revenue without making the game any introducing any kind of pay to win aspects. Next question. I know it's a far stretch, but I'm truly dedicated to the vanilla feel of WoB pre-level 140 and would be interested to see all ranks be able to invade, with battles being limited to rank tiers just like KC. Following up on the last long shot suggestion, I'd hope to see mini elite squads where any capped level 40 can choose a profession, mini Nuberu versus mini Exequi, since healing at this level is a moot point, so as to further customize the vanilla feel of WoB. And as always, thank you LSM for this amazing game, one that keeps even my wandering soul coming back every time. Okay, so the first one, all ranks being able to invade. This is somewhat heavily tied to the whole any rank can attack any rank, which I want to preserve two things in WoB that are both very important. One is allowing players who are not at the very top of the game, be like level 150s, allowing them to be relevant in the race versus race interactions. Having them able to participate in breaking the base accomplishes that. Even if you don't have hours every day to devote to the game, maybe you get on here and there, you just keep a cap, rank 6 account and have some fun with friends. You can contribute to invasions because you can help with breaking the base. And that allows the alright level 150s to maybe conserve their pools a bit and get ready to storm in when the base goes down. So for the same reason that I want to allow them to do that, I also equally don't want to allow rank 6s to go in without or with the protection rather. So if rank 6s could go into the enemy base and kill the boss without being able to be attacked by higher ranks, it would feel really bad for those who have put a lot of time into a rank 8 character. Not everyone is interested in training up multiple characters. So for those that only have one rank 8, if they have to watch and be able to do nothing while the lower ranks just storm in and a swarm of lower ranks comes in and takes the boss without the rank 8 ever being able to attack them, that feels pretty bad. So I want to preserve both things. I want to preserve that ability for rank 6s to contribute, but there also needs to be value in reaching the highest rank. It needs to be useful. You need to have something that no other rank has. Otherwise, it's just not really worth it. So it's not likely that I would um, take out the ability um, for rank 6s to, or not take out, but rather make rank 6s not able to be attacked by higher ranks. And it's not really likely that I would make anyone under rank 5 able to invade. You're already able to contribute by helping with the base. And invasion is pretty rough when you go in. I think a lot of people that are newer, because when you're talking about level 1 to 40, those are the newer people. So I think if newer people swarmed in and just got their face smashed by a level 150, it wouldn't feel that great for them either. I mean, even if it is probably somewhat similar to getting beaten by someone who's, um, say, if you're like level 41, you get attacked by someone who's level 75. Even though that's somewhat the same, I think there's a big difference between walking in and getting hit, getting one shot, and walking in and getting hit for 100 times your health in a single blow. There's sort of a big difference there, where I think walking in and getting one shot is a little bit less demoralizing. Next question. With the removal of boss boost, people are now flocking to base damage boost. Are there any plans to make more permanent boosts that don't give unfair advantages to one race, but instead just grant the squads and fractions with their own identity? Two things I want to address here. So one, about the flocking to base damage boost, while base damage is one of the more popular boosts now, it's still not seeing the same level of adoption as boss damage. Base damage is around the 50 or 60% adoption rate. Now, to be fair, there are a few squads that haven't set a new one yet, so it's possible they might pick boss damage. But even if they did, there's already more people running non-base damage boosts than there were running non-boss damage boosts back when boss damage boost was still in. So even if all the remaining squads took base damage, the there would still be a higher percentage of people running non-base damage boosts. So while it is popular, it's not to the same level as boss damage, and there's a reason for that. It's because base damage is less critical than boss damages, and I'll explain. Boss damage is a very fierce all-out competition with essentially no limit between both sides, where every little thing you can get is an advantage, because you have two sides sort of playing tug of war. And when you're playing tug of war against each other, the smallest thing results in a win, and everybody wants that win. Now, it's not the same case where you have base damages. There's a limit to where adding on extra ability to break the base stops adding more effectiveness. And that limit is when you're able to reliably break the base, because it's a fixed amount. You have to be able to get enough people on it to do, 50,000 damage to it while outpacing the regions like 5,000 every 5 minutes or something. So if you can outpace that and you can get enough people while keeping enough people off the base or keeping enough defenders of the enemy race from preventing you from attacking, then you don't actually need more base damage boost. And at that point, if you're able to reliably break the base, then maybe you start looking at the other permanent boost options, and maybe a melee training boost becomes, cooler, because instead of just being able to break the base that you already can do, you could instead be getting 25% more melee training gains for everybody in your squad. So at that point, it actually becomes more useful to have the melee training boost. Now, I am planning to add more permanent boosts. For one of the ideas that I've decided on is I'm going to add boosts relating to the elite squads. Now, this might seem counterintuitive to add them to normal squads instead of the elite squads themselves, but I figured this sort of thematically fits with the original series, and it would be sort of cool if, say the captain of Squad 4 wants to be the medical squad. They can do just that. They can set a medical, ally healing boost or something like that. So it will be a very natural fit for people who want to be the best at healing their allies and being in the medical squad to flock to that squad. Similar fashion, someone could set a boost related to the stealth force or the exequi. I still have to finalize the details of exactly what the effects of those boosts will be, but basically there will be one permanent boost for each of the elite squads that will significantly amplify the usefulness or effectiveness of players who are in that elite squad. And I'm also looking at potential other options. The other thing is with that, as well as back to the base damage boost question, with base damage boost, for the reasons that I mentioned about base damage versus boss damage, I think it's a lot easier to balance base damage boost with other boosts. There gets to a point where, if base damage boost is like maybe only 5% and other boosts are 25%, everybody will want to take the other boosts. But with boss damage boost, even if the boss damage boost is only 5%, a lot of people would still want to take it. Even if there are boosts that give 30, 40% training, they're still just probably going to want that 5% because they want to win that boss. So boss damage boost just completely choked everything else out. Base damage does not seem to be actually having the same choking effect. And I think base damage is something I can balance. Next question, are there any new updates coming up to the game? Yes, there's update 2.6.8 coming in about 2 or 3 weeks. I will post more details on that when we get a little bit closer to it. I'm still unsure how much we're going to be able to get done, because if my hand recovers quickly, then I'll be able to contribute more to it. Otherwise, we'll be limited to what Hitori's able to do. And Hitori's contributions are pretty great, but he is a little bit more limited in his free time than I am, because he also has to work a day job and take care of a family. So yeah. And there's also the Hell event we're planning for this month, and probably by the end of this month. All right, that is it for the future update and feature questions. Next section is the game questions. First up, how private are private messages on WoB? I'm assuming this means who can see them other than you and the person who sent them to you. The answer to that is basically me. That's it. because I have access to the database, and having access to the database means I can see all of the data inside of it, which means I can see your health, I can see what time you logged in, I can see, obviously, I can go to the messages table and look at contents of messages. But to be very clear about this, moderators do not have access to read private messages. Senior moderators do not have access to read private messages. Head moderators do not have access to read this. Content admins do not have this access. Only me and Hattori is technically head admin, so I guess he sort of has that access as well. But we keep this very restricted. We treat privacy seriously, so it's basically maybe one or two people, and we don't use this unless we actually really have to, which isn't that common. I don't think I've had to do this in months. Next question. How exactly do squad and elite squad ranks work? As in, what do you gain from them? What are the obligations associated with them? How exactly does one challenge them? And what does that challenge involve? Also, does it anger the squad if you challenge without asking or letting them know? I don't want to annoy anyone if I do it. So what do you gain from them? Well, there's two. When you're talking about a normal seat, there's a couple things. For one, uh, we're starting with talking about the seats in the numbered squads, so squad 1 to 13 and fraction 1 to 10. So when you have one of those seats, you gain increased effect from all squad and fraction boosts. This is your sort of your seat times 20. So if you have third seat, you gain 20% increased effect. Now, to be clear, that's 20% of the effect itself. So let's say your squad had a 50% regen boost in your third seat, you would get 20% extra of that, which 20% of 50% is 10%. So instead of having 50% regen boost, you would have 60%. And that increase in boost gets higher the higher your seat is. So lieutenants and fraction commanders get 1.4x, captains and espada get 1.6x, and the race assistant, so the assistant commander or hand of the king, they also get 60%, same as a captain. And then the race leaders actually get 80% increase, 1.8x effect on all squad boosts, squad and fraction boosts. There's also another perk that you can on some seats, which is like lieutenant seat, captain seat, race assistant, race leader, and then depending on your race for Shinigami, the lieutenant and captain seats in the elite squads, as well as on the hollow side because the hollow have fewer normal squads than Shinigami. Uh, in the hollow elite units, there are more seats that get seat items, so you can actually get a seat item with any seat in a hollow elite unit. And those seat items give you in-combat boosts. So we're talking about they usually give dual boost, dual resist. Some of them give dual penetration and debuff resist. And the effects are stronger the higher up your seat item is. So a captain's item is going to be stronger than a lieutenant's, and so forth. And then, okay, so also, what are the obligations associated with them? The primary obligation associated with every seat is maintaining your office points. You will have a certain number of office points deducted every day. This is more based on the seat. It's somewhere from 4 to 8, depending on if you're just a third seat or you're the race leader. You can get office points either, there's a chance of getting them when you kill somebody from the other race. You can also, for a surefire way to get them, there's officer patrols, which are sort of like a minigame where you're managing various teams, sending them out to deal with situations and whatnot, and you can get officer points that way. And then also, I mentioned that fighting gives you a chance, but if you're defending your race in an invasion, it's pretty much guaranteed. So if you kill somebody who's invading your home area, you will get OP. That's like pretty much guaranteed, if I recall correctly. And then as far as the challenging is a straight up fight. So you have to beat them in a 1v1 battle in order to take the seat. There's other ways. Obviously, if they fail to keep up with their obligations, they will be kicked out by the system. The other obligation that applies specifically to captains, espada, and race leaders is they have to get a monthly amount of squad points or race points. So captains and espada, for instance, they have to get 300 squad or fraction points every month. If they fail to get that, they will be kicked out of their seat. The race leader has to get 300 race points every month, or else they will be kicked out of their seat. And then as far as asking someone or letting them know, I do think in most squads, usually if you PM the person first, you guys can do a spar at a time where there's, not like an invasion or something important going on, and people usually appreciate that courtesy. Okay, next question. I know you are working on stalling currently, but do you have any updates? Not yet. My hand has still not recovered, so I'm not really able to put in work on the system. We are still gathering battle IDs and gathering data that I will be analyzing once I am back to work at some point. My first priority basically is the event. So we want to get the event out, and then right after the event, I'll be working on the anti-stall mechanics because we want to get those in before this year's tournament. And we want to get them not just implemented, but we want to get them implemented with weeks in advance so that we can test and refine them before the tournament starts. Second thing, do you see a problem with Spirit users and how the fleeing systems work with them? I know currently I can fail fleas and have a huge difference in space between me and them, but pretty much anyone in the game can run away from me easy as pie. So the flea thing, the reason I don't think this is necessarily as bad for Spirit users as it might initially seem is because Spirit users do have more control effects. So, for instance, you're able to barrier trap, you're able to bind, you're able to do that, and then create distance for yourself. Now, yes, the opponent can have movement boost and things like that, but sort of goes both ways. If they try to flee, you can, bind them if you're in range and whatnot. It's possible fleeing is probably slanted a bit towards melee, but hard to say exactly how much. And then as far as the difference, the only factors in determining flee chance are your speed, which is not a stat that any spec gets an advantage with, as well as your health. If you're low on health, you will have a lower chance of fleeing. And if you're bound, you have a lower chance of fleeing. So if a melee user is trying to flee and you bind them, they'll have reduced chance to flee, which is also why I'm saying it might not be as bad for Spirit as it initially seems. Next up, barrier spamming for melee is a bit of a pain in fights. They need their barriers, I admit, but they can almost use them too often. As a Spirit player, I almost never see a reason to try and break them. I might do a little bit of damage, but not normally enough to attempt. Since I cannot clear the barrier completely, they just run behind it and heal. This is a bit too often, considering that it pretty much resets the fight, and since they have a much higher range of movement, it is in their favor. If I back away, they just run behind a rock and stall out. If I stay close, I almost have to take a boosted recoil to the face. So unless my ice is up or shield, they're going to hurt me really bad. But since they can equip 2 of them, and with only 2 turns between the 2, it pretty much lets them reset the fight constantly. Would not be so bad if residual core did not erase itself if you hit them twice in a row, but you lose a nice portion of damage that way. I'll answer the residual core part first because that's a really short answer. When I was doing the math on residual core, I actually figured out the amount of damage you lose by hitting someone constantly with residual core is not as much as you would expect. Because of the way damage is front loaded into the initial tick, the initial hit damage, you maybe lose 35 or 40% of the residual damage, but it's not even 50%. So, especially now that I lowered the ticks but increased the initial hit, it's less detrimental to do that. So it's actually not terrible to hit someone continuously with residual core, depending on the situation. Now, as for the melee barrier issue, this one is very, very tricky. There's a delicate balance between melee and spirit, and if I take away melee's ability to barriers are sort of their one main defensive option, and if I take that away, then I think right now that will just lead to more instances of where they're just running away the entire fight trying to avoid spirit users. And I think that's actually a worse option than having them have barriers, which at least keeps them somewhat in range. I did buff the dissipates, so the strategy that I found while being a spirit user is somewhat effective is to first lay out an AoE so that the AoE is up against their barrier, and then dissipate from the safety of the AoE so that it's not leaving me as open for a counterattack, which actually makes dissipate in the situation more useful than it can be for a melee user, because in a melee versus melee fight, when they dissipate, they're leaving themselves open to the opponent getting a full damage attack. But with Spirit, you can mitigate some of that by sitting in an AoE. I will look into that a little bit more though. Okay. Next question. I had a thought about core boosts. Everyone uses DR. Without it, you can't fight. So essentially, everyone only really has 2 boosts. What if you made the static defense boost higher for releases and drastically reduced the percentage for DR? For example, imagine increase the static defense of release to 15/30% and reduce the max DR to 6/24%. My intention would be to allow for builds without core DR to be competitive with builds that use DR. So I agree that I would like to make it a little bit more possible for more variety of defensive boosts. And there's a couple things I'm considering with this. The first and most immediate option is, for starters, so much of the current meta has been balanced around core DR being a thing that I don't want to throw that out right before a tournament, because that's too much of a change to probably get fully balanced within a month. So I don't want to shake things up that much, but I am looking at two things. One, I'm probably going to add an extra turn of length to the dual nerf effect, similar to what I did with the weakness, but with the nerf core boost on swords, I'll add an extra turn of length. And the other thing is I'm debating at probably adding a core defense boost. And by defense boost, I mean literally the effect defense boost, which increases your stat-based defense. You'd have that as an option for a core boost instead of DR. So sort of depends on what you're going with. I'm okay with doing that because there's restrictions on only having one defensive core boost, so I'm sort of okay with that. It's also possible when I do that I might take the static boost on swords and shift it to maybe being part DR. We'll see. There's a number of ways I could go with that, but for sure, I'm probably going to increase the length on nerf core boost, and I might also add the core defense boost to give another option. We'll see. Next question is, what does the percentage effect of recoil refer to? Is it the percentage of total damage dealt that will be applied to the user? So the percentage of recoil is actually two things. It's both the amount of damage that the attack is increased, the amount of, or the increase to the attack's power, and it's also the percentage of damage that is dealt back to the user. So for instance, assuming you and your opponent have equal defense, and you were to use an ability that normally does 5,000 damage, but it has 20% recoil. Okay, 20% of 5,000 is 1,000. So your attack would do 6,000 damage to the opponent, and you would take 1,000 damage recoil. Important note about this is if your defense differs between you and your opponent, it can actually affect this. So if you have more defense than your opponent and you use a recoil, it's favorable to you because the recoil amount is calculated before your defense. So they would still take 6,000 damage, but let's say you have a little bit more defense. Instead of taking 1,000 recoil, you might only take like 800, something like that. Next question. How long do the associated effects of AoEs, like boosted damage for lightning and reduced movement for ice, last? Is it the full duration of the AoE, even if the opponent moves out of the AoE? No, the length on this is 2 turns, and it refreshes as long as they stay in the AoE. So once they move out, it will fade after 2 turns. Next question. Why did you remove the moving moves, the ones that used to move you towards the opponent? This answer is really simple. At the time when moving attacks existed, you could not move before you attacked. The two-stage turn was not in. You had to choose between moving or attacking. So the moving attacks were sort of a compromise that allowed you, if you wanted to move in, then you could. The limitation on them was that you were unable to use them diagonally, so people could still play around it a bit. But once I added in moving and attacking, when you consider how much distance, especially melee players, are able to close in and then attack, this would be very excessive if I added it. You could have people attacking from like 15 squares away, or even potentially more. So I didn't really want to do that, as it's less necessary and would also just be completely excessive. Next one. When using XP as a level, do you think a player should become competitive enough to fight most other level 150s? I guess this means at what point of EXP do you expect a player to be competitive with other level 150s? Someone says, I've seen some players at 30 million XP able to beat those with 40 million XP. But mostly it appears to be players closer to 35 million. I'm assuming this means 300 million, because to get to level 150, you need about 215 million XP. So I'm assuming you mean 300 million, 350 million, and 400 million. The case here is your core stats that you need for your build. Usually you'll cap those somewhere between 300 and 350 million. After that, XP is less of a factor in combat power because you're training other stats that you don't use. Like for a melee user, they're training up intelligence and capping that, but that doesn't actually increase their usefulness in combat. There's also elite squad skill, which is it's a chunk of 60 million XP. So the old EXP cap was 390 million. The current one is 450 million. But elite squad abilities are not necessary for combat. They can help, but they're certainly not critical, whereas the core stats are critical. So it's sort of, once you get to about 300 to 350 million XP, from there, the larger factor instead of stats in determining whether you win or not is your specific build and also your ability levels. So I expect anybody at maybe 300 million XP and higher to be competitive with just about any other R8, assuming that person has their abilities capped or close to capped and has a good build setup. Next question. What is the most fun effect you have implemented into WoB battle-wise in your opinion? This is an interesting question. I think there's I can't pick one for sure. I definitely can't pick one, but I think some of the more fun ones, um, getting a knockback combo off feels really good. When you have like ult knockback and you get that you get the weakness on someone, you get the barrier trap on them, you just smack them into the wall for like 15,000 or 16,000 damage. It feels really good. So I think knockback is one of those because it's situational and requires some skill and thought to pull off. Another one, Immolate can be pretty cool. It feels really good. It's one of those like anime style moments where, you set up the trap and you just like clap your hands together and they just explode. It's like one of those moments. So Immolate feels pretty fun when you can pull it off. Um, those are probably two of the major ones. Although the one that I think people wouldn't expect, heal reduction when well timed, feels really good. I really enjoy properly using heal reduction. When you get the perfect timing where you've got the right damage threat on the opponent so that they're about to heal, and then you put the heal reduction on, and you can just you can almost look through the screen and just see their face go, "Oh crap," and then they just have to shift to being completely defensive for 8 turns, and I'm just sitting there laughing. It's pretty nice. Next question. Thank you for the much needed buff to Kyoto Arena. The only complaint I have is that the first 15 double AI boost doesn't affect Kyoto Arena AI or Soul Hunting AI in Kyoto City. If this is fixed, the Kyoto Arena should pay equal to the hard AI, and only Souls in KC will need boost to Soul payout. If that's ever in future planning, I get Souls give other benefits. Not sure what the last part means. So I guess this question is asking, can Kyoto Arena be changed to be affected by and consume your 15 daily bonus AI? I've thought about this. I've debated on which way would be better. There's sort of pros and cons to both ways. I think for right now, I'd rather keep them separate. Again, because it's only 15 battles. So I'd rather keep those as part of the normal arena battles. And I'm sort of okay with the Kyoto Arena not necessarily giving the most money because the stat gains from it are very large. But we'll see. I'm open to potential changes there, but I don't have any immediate plans. Next question. Out of mild curiosity, how big are the map squares in Hueco Kyoto City, and Soul Society in your opinion, and how do they compare to the size of the squares in the battle map? So I'll be completely honest on this one. I did not design the map squares for each area with a specific set of real-world dimensions in mind. I designed them mostly for the gameplay, thinking about how many squares I wanted for people to be able to travel, to fit all the barracks into, to have a significant amount of space without barracks in it, and things like that. Um, so it's hard to say with the ability to travel. It's really hard to give a realistic expectation because probably the speed that WoB uses for travel would be somewhat unrealistic if you were to actually go into the Soul Society world. You can travel across the entire map in something like, what is it? Probably about 6 seconds. And obviously, you can't travel across the entirety of Soul Society in 6 seconds. So that's an instance where we've designed around the game instead of designing around something realistic. Because there's an important thing when you're talking about game design. And a lot of games, the way they have to consider this is how much of reality they use. In this case, our reality is the Bleach universe. So that's what we consider for our reality, whereas other games like a survival game, for instance, might consider the real world their reality. For our reality, we use the Bleach universe. But when you're talking about reality in a video game, you have to make sure that reality doesn't get in the way of fun. So reality should only be implemented in places where it adds fun to the game, not where it sort of gets in the way. And certain things like survival mechanics where you have to eat and stuff, that can be fun. It depends on the type of game. In a survival game, that's really fun. In other types of games, maybe that just gets in the way of what you really want to be doing. As for the second question, though, how do they compare to the size of the squares in the battle map? I would say probably each battle arena is about the size of one travel map square. That seems about right, because you have to be on the same square to be able to attack your opponent. So it seems about right that each battle map should be around the size of one travel square, maybe a little bit bigger. And the next question, are we going to see pen buffs? Defense boost and invasion DR makes it really hard to win invasion fights, almost impossible. Right, so let's be clear about this. Invasion does not have the invasion defense boost is not DR. The invasion defense boost is defense boost, so it increases stat-based defense, which penetration does not affect. And the thing here with penetration is defense specs aren't really popular right now, but the role of penetration is largely intended to provide a counter against defensive specs. So I don't necessarily want to make penetration core, really like just as equally as strong as, say, weakness, residual, and berserk secondary cores, and also better than them against defense, because that's not really fair. If all of these cores are the same as penetration, and then penetration also has this added strength of doing better against defensive specs, that's really not fair. So that's not really my goal. I will evaluate penetration. Residual core is popular right now. Weakness core is gaining some traction. People are trying out berserk core, although not really in the boost plus berserk pattern, although we may see some of that soon. And I'll be keeping my eye on it, but uh, I don't currently have any plans for penetration boosts. Or penetration buffs, rather. When's the next event, man? I'm getting anxious. We're hoping for the end of this month. If everything goes well, we'll have it up. We could have it up by the 3rd week, although I would say that's less likely than getting it up by the 4th week. So probably 4th week of this month, best case scenario. We can't, the event I'm planning to run about a week, so we certainly don't want to let this run too late, because by mid-June we need to have all of other events out of the way in order to be running tournament registration and preparation. That does it for the game questions. We're now on to the miscellaneous questions section. First up, who do you think will repeat their international fail this year at MSI, G2 or TSM? And if TSM, how disappointing would you be? How disappointed would you be? Would C9 do a better job? This is a really difficult question to answer because I haven't seen G2 play at all this year. Based on what I've seen from TSM, I would say it's probably, I hate to say this, but it's probably more likely if either one of those teams is going to choke, that it would be TSM. Because they really struggled in their match against Gigabyte Marines. They almost didn't win. It was very close. It went to all 5 games. And it's true that Gigabyte Marines was looking very strong, and maybe there was some issues with TSM, I don't know, being rusty or something. But still, just based on that, I have to say if I had to pick one of those two teams, it would probably be TSM. And I would be pretty disappointed if they sort of choked and didn't do well. I have every confidence that they can, that they'll be able to, and that that loss should help wake them up a little bit. But we'll see. As for the question of would C9 do a better job, I don't think so. Given that TSM beat C9 in a best of 5 in a fair match, I don't really think C9 would do a better job. The question there would be like, is TSM like better at domestic, and are they, somehow specifically worse at international tournaments? And would C9 be better at international tournaments? But there's no real evidence to show either way, so I wouldn't say that C9 would do a better job per se. Next question, what levels would you say correspond to the characters in Bleach? For instance, a rank 1 might be Ichigo Pre-Soul Reaper. A rank 2 or R3, generic hollows or unseated Shinigami. Rank 6 to rank 7 would be 4th seat to lieutenants and fractions such as Yuichika and Rukia. Lower to mid-level rank 8 might be Renji and Toshiro, or Zayalaporo and Grimjo. I imagine 150 to cap stats would be the peak a Soul Reaper or Hollow could go. In DSI or Aizen, there's not really a Hollow equivalent. So I think for the most part, the rank titles give this away, where human obviously is a human. This is not a human with special like spirit powers like Quincy or something like that. Or like Ichigo sort of had these. Well, even Ichigo's a human didn't really have these like super spiritual powers. It wasn't until he became a Shinigami that he started being aware. He was just a spiritually sensitive human who was able to sense things going on. He didn't really have any real power to fight them. Rank 2 is sort of your basic. You've got a academy student who's learning the ways. You've got a basic hollow who's just turned. Maybe they're within their first few months of turning, and they're not terribly strong yet. When you get to rank 3, you start getting the larger hollows who are more experienced. And like, what's an example? What was the name of that hollow that I think I don't remember his name, but he had the tongue thing, or the tongue leeches or whatever. They shot out and they exploded. So those are the kind of hollows we're going for around rank 3, where you've got the hollows that are a little bit bigger, they're more experienced, maybe they got some interesting abilities. Um, and then for the Shinigami equivalent, these would be new squad members. So they graduated from the academy, they joined a squad. You know, they're learning, but they don't have their release yet. And for rank 4, we go a step farther with that, where you've got the elite squad members. They're on the verge. They're on the verge of unlocking their release. And on the hollow side, these are the people who've evolved into Gillian. So, you know, they're big, they're very strong, they're very challenging for a normal person, for even a senior squad member to take on. But then when you get to rank 5, obviously everything changes. You get the officer level people, where you've probably got your third seat, maybe a lieutenant, probably not a lieutenant at rank 5 though. Realistically, the rank 5 is probably going to be maybe your third, fourth, fifth seat, as they'll be a little bit new with their Shikai. And on the hollow side, you have the Arankar. These are going to be the lower level Arankar who are maybe Gillian level or even less than Gillian level when they were transformed to Arankar, and so they're sort of on the lower end. And then rank 6, you have the elite officers who are probably like Rukia would fit into this category. And you got guys who are lieutenants. Maybe they're pushing on, getting close to unlocking that Bankai, sort of where Renji was early in the series. Rank 7, obviously, everybody here has Bankai. The hollow side, these are Espada. If they're not Espada, they're close to as strong as Espada. But you know, there was a wide range of skill in the Espada, where the 10th Espada was, or I guess the 9th Espada was taken out by like Rukia, and the 8th Espada was taken out by. I guess in the end, it took Mayuri to finish him off, but yeah, basically when you compare the strength of that to the strength of the higher level Espada, there was a quite significant gap. And then rank 8 is going to be your stronger than average captain or Espada. So we're talking about like the top few captains, the top few Espada. Like especially when you get to level 150, this is going to be like your Kyoraku, Ukitake, Yamamoto, Aizen. On the hollow side, I think some of the top Espada qualified as this. I mean, Baragon was kind of a badass if you think about it. It took 2 Shinigami captains to take him out, and that even involved one of them sacrificing his own hand to do it. So I think Baragon qualifies as very strong when it took 2 captain level opponents and a physical sacrifice in order to be able to defeat him. So that would be around. R8 is definitely those stronger than normal, can wipe the floor with the normal captain, those type of people. Next question: do you ever get sick of my long ass questions? I just find Bleach lore really interesting. P.S. I love the video format. Pretty please make this a semi-regular thing. I don't really mind long ass questions. It's not. I mean, I read fairly fast, probably a little bit faster than average, so it's not too much of a problem for me to read it. As long as it's not like the same questions being asked every week, it's not really a problem. And as for making the video format a regular thing, I talked about this a little bit last week, but probably even when I start getting my hands back, I'll probably do this maybe at least every other week. So I may alternate. Next, why the hell is someone so obsessed with your bedroom habits? People love asking personal questions. It's just like everybody's curious, you know? And when you get somebody like me, like who, you know, like made a game that people play or something like that, they're always really curious to see, you know, what kind of person does that and, you know, learn all the little embarrassing tidbits about them. Some people will also ask questions specifically because this is a video format. They want to see how I react when I answer the question. They want to see if I get embarrassed or I blush or something like that. But as you can see, I sort of just have a poker face. Next question. Have you heard of Jollibee? If there's a food chain near you, will you try it out? Oh, isn't that it's like a chicken place? And I think it was started, or it's in the style of like Filipino food. I'm pretty sure there was one back when I lived about an hour east of here, and I tried them one time, and the chicken was really good. I don't think there are any around here now, though. And next question, do you think the Iron Bonobos will overtake the former dragons in prestige one day on WoW? Find out in Season 8 of Game of Thrones. That is all I have to say. Season 8, Game of Thrones. Pretty sure that's what we'll see. We'll find out. Next, what do you think of the Dark Brotherhood? Yes. And next one, if I wish upon a Elisum's Corner, can we get a squad boost this weekend? I consulted Helix Fossil on this one, and Helix Fossil said no. So, you may address your complaints to Helix Fossil. Looks like that's it for this week's questions. This one turned out a bit longer than the previous two. It's about 45 minutes. I'll try to put the timestamps like I did with the last one so that you guys can skip to particular sections if you want to see that. And thanks for watching.